Good morning, and welcome to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you to Talk of the Town for this Friday, July 10th. I'm Gary Stevens. Open line following the 10 and 11 o'clock news blocks. Patty Vandenberg will be with us at the bottom of the hour with what's new around Holland. Peg McNichols in the WHTC newsroom, and in our first half, in an hour, we'll update you on what is going on at Dumont Lake. That's where the Allegan County Administrative Offices are, and that's where the Allegan County Board of Commissioners meet. We'll chat with Board Chairman Jim Story along with Commissioner Dean Kappinga during the 10:30 segment. But in our first segment on the second Friday of the month, it's Ask the Attorney. The meter is not running, as you have an attorney to answer questions about probate, business law, and a few other things as well. This is an odd month, odd-numbered month, that is, not an odd month, because we have Nathan Bocks of Central Park Law joining us. No, Nathan, you are not odd. It's just the odd month. That's all.
That's all right. I don't mind being called odd or being here on the odd months, Gary. It's always good to be here.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question for Nathan, we're on a Zoom connection, but don't try to get on that Zoom connection. It's only for us. But you can join in the conversation the old-fashioned way, 395-1450, 395-1450. Yes, it is Holland Mayor Nathan Bocks, but we want to focus more on legal questions, as they say, his day job. And if you have a question about the city, fine, but let's just say, hang on. A week from next Thursday morning, Peg will have a member of the Holland City Council to answer your city questions, because she'll be subbing for me on Thursday and Friday. But Nathan, let's talk attorney talk, as they say. And I want to reintroduce a subject that we touched upon in our last conversation a couple of months ago, and that is the impact of COVID-19 on probate, and maybe more of an awareness than anything else that people need to get their affairs in order. Maybe because, let's put it this way, with this COVID-19, our mortality has become more apparent, and we're starting to become more recognizable of it.
It's exactly. And I'm seeing a lot of that here in the office. One of the things you did mention, yep, I am the mayor of Holland, but my full-time job is running the law office. And that's a question I get fairly frequently is, hey, are you still practicing law? Yes, definitely I am. The mayor's job in Holland is designed to be a very part-time job, or at least it's a full-time job with part-time pay, as we've only half joked before. But in order to make sure that I keep the lights on at home and my daughter at Michigan State University, I need to continue to practice law. So we're doing that as well. And we've seen an incredible pickup in the amount of business that we're doing in the last month, now that things have opened up and we can start having clients here in the office again. And one of the things that I'm hearing from folks is they are acutely aware of the fact that circumstances can change at a moment's notice, and that they need to make sure that they have things prepared, both for themselves and for their loved ones. And so we've been doing an awful lot of estate planning throughout this process, and getting people's affairs back in order, getting things organized for folks, and even for folks doing wills and trusts for the first times ever in their lives.
Now, when people establish estate planning, the documents involved, are there, quote, legal documents from a municipality that need to be filled out? Or is it more of a case of your office complies the agreements, and it is like a document of law, even though it might not come from a municipality?
You're exactly right at the second part of that. We prepared the documents here. There's no need for the city, the county, or the state to be involved at all in that process. It's essentially a private document for the individual or individuals that we're doing it for. And that information only becomes public, or only needs to be disclosed to somebody else when that document starts to be used, at the point where somebody else is starting to help manage their affairs or to wrap things up if they've passed away. It is possible, and it was much more common 40 or 50 years ago to file a will with the probate court before you passed away. And that was done more as a security measure or safety measure. But fireproof boxes, fireproof safes are so much more common and so much less expensive than they used to be that most people are just keeping these documents at home.
Is it still maybe it's just as a wise thing? Yeah, you have the fireproof, or you like to put it in a safe deposit box in the bank, or do we dare say keep it with your attorney? But is it still maybe a good idea to make sure that it's filed with the probate court so that to a certain extent there's an outside non-partial influence on this entire matter?
If there is a concern about, hey, I don't want my will to get into the wrong hands, or I don't want my trust to get into the wrong hands, they may file it there. But I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of doing that. I'm frankly not even a big fan of safe deposit boxes at the bank because of the accessibility issues that come along with them. We like to have these documents at the ready in case they need to be used. I've had circumstances before where I have had clients call and say, hey, my wife is in the hospital. She had a stroke. We need our power of attorney for medical care decisions. Can you get that for us? And my answer is sure. Where is it? Well, it's in the safety deposit box. And the client's in Arizona and I'm up here, and it's simply not feasible for me to be able to go to that safe deposit box and open up that box for the client if I don't have the authority to be able to do that. So we do like to keep these documents accessible. Most folks have now access to a fireproof box or can get one and can provide the level of security that they need, because these documents do not contain information that could be used to, say, steal somebody's identity. We do not put social security numbers in the documents. We don't put other sensitive information in the documents. It's basically names, addresses, and phone numbers that are there. And so really what you're doing is you're trying to keep these documents safe from loss or from fire. But otherwise, a fireproof box at home is generally perfectly fine for almost everybody.
Maybe I'm sort of like being a little paranoid about the fact that have not so much the original, safe deposit or a separate box, but have a copy, so that if somebody doesn't have to, might try to filter something, and then all of a sudden, look at here, and then you say, wait a minute, we got another copy here, and that doesn't jive with what I have here.
Sure. And we provide our clients with the originals. I keep copies of the documents here. Technology has allowed us to scan those documents in. And actually, the moment I scan it, it goes in my office. We store it in 5 separate locations. We've got the main computer that I use here. We've got a backup system here at the office, a second backup system that I keep in town and off site, so it's completely accessible. And then I use 2 different online encrypted services, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, so that if everything went down in Holland, we'd still have access. I used to just use the one on the East Coast, and then Hurricane Sandy hit a few years ago, and we lost connection to it for a day or two, which made me a little nervous, so I added a second one. We never lost any of the data. None of the data was ever exposed, but we just couldn't connect to it, and so we said, okay, we're going to keep it in those things. So I'm actually keeping 5 separate electronic copies in separate locations for clients, and can get those to clients through email in a moment's notice.
He is Nathan Bocks of Central Park Law here in Holland. If you have a question, legal question, probate, but other matters legally, he'll be happy to answer it at 395-1450, 395-1450. Nathan, on our morning news yesterday during our Destination Downtown segment, Linda Hart had brought in Johnny Garcia from KO Cuts, who's just opened up a new salon in downtown Holland. And he's a young entrepreneur, a former boxer that went to barber school, and became a barber himself, and set up shop down, further away, and then found the opening in downtown Holland to set up shop. And it leads me to something I think we discussed before, but I sort of want to bring it back. The promises and pitfalls of starting your own business, especially in terms of making sure you have all the legal paperwork in. What are some of the common issues that you face when you sort of counsel, say, a young entrepreneur into setting up their own business?
Sure. And I counsel a lot of small business folks, and that's another thing that we've seen a rise in this age of COVID is people who have been at home, maybe have been working from home, or may have even had reduced hours and said, I'm going to start taking advantage of that hobby business that I had and maybe make that grow a little bit. Or people who had ideas that didn't really think to bring them to fruition are starting to do that now. So we're seeing an increase in small business owners coming in and saying, I want to get started, I want to get up and running. What are the things I need to be concerned about? And you're exactly right. You want to make sure that you're organized correctly. The most common thing that a small business does to get themselves organized is to put together a limited liability company. And that is a form of incorporation for those of us who are older folks. And so, Gary, since you said I'm one of the older folks, I'm gonna pull you into that category with me as well.
That's fine. That's no problem about that.
Yeah, we used to talk about corporations or partnerships. And a great advantage of a corporation is it provides liability protection for the owners of that business, the stockholders of that business. So, for instance, you were around in the 80s when people were finding foreign items in their cans of Coca-Cola or maybe in their Wendy's chili, and Wendy's and Coca-Cola were getting sued by customers saying, hey, you're not providing us a safe product. And while Wendy's may have been getting sued and Coca-Cola may have been getting sued, the individual stockholders for those companies did not have to worry about their own individual assets being exposed to those lawsuits. So just because I happen to be a Coca-Cola stockholder, I don't have to worry that I'm going to lose my house if Coca-Cola gets sued. I only have to worry about the value of my stock. And that's one of the big advantages of a corporation, is it provides liability protection for the people who are the owners of that company. Big downside to a corporation, the corporate system, however, or that model, is it's fairly complicated. There are stockholders. The stockholders elects a board of directors. The board of directors elects officers. And if you're a small business and you're one of two people, you say, I need 3 levels of organization just for me, or just for me and the person I'm working with. And so that becomes very complicated. On the other end of the spectrum was the partnership. And what that was a way for 2 or more people to get together and say, we want to work together. We want to define our relationship. We want to define how we're going to make decisions, who are going to be the owners of this business. And it was a fairly simple way of setting things up. But the downside for a partnership was there was no liability protection for the owners. The individual owners of that partnership were liable for whatever risks that the company may be taking, or any liability that the company may be incurring, or the partnership was incurring. And so in the 90s, we came up with a hybrid, and it was called a limited liability company. And it had the simplicity of a partnership, but the liability protection of a corporation. And that has become now the most common form for a small business to set up. Even if you're an individual, one person, my law practice is a limited liability company. Why do I do that? Well, because I don't want the liabilities that are generated by my operating a business, by my having sidewalks and parking lots that people could slip and fall on. If my business gets sued, I don't want my own personal assets to be exposed to that. So I've set myself up as a limited liability company. You can have multiple members of a limited liability company as well. And so you can set up who owns what percentage and what it is that they're going to be doing with that. So that is by far the most common thing that's there. And I do have to apologize. I don't know if we've got a commercial break coming or not, but I can't see you on the screen. So if you want to take a break for a commercial, you're going to have to give me an audio cue.
No, I'm fine. I can see you just
good.
fine. So
good. I've got a glitch with my computer right now. All I can see is your microphone. I can't see you. So let me know. And
we're good.
I like to talk if I've got the opportunity.
We're A-OK, and on this end, you're fine, and I'm fine. And by the way, we of course always will have the audio on our website at WHTC.com, and we'll put a link to the video a little bit later on today at WHTC.com. So we'll do this as well.
Perfect. And I can hear you very well. I've just got a box on my computer screen that's covering up most of you. So I just wanted to make sure that you know if you need a cutoff for a commercial break, I can do that.
No problem at all. 395-1450. No, you can't join us on Zoom. You can call us at 395-1450 if you have a question for Attorney Nathan Bocks of Central Park Law. How much do you dabble with companies that want to set up an IPO?
Very little. Very little. At the level of my law practice, I like to say I serve regular people. Your friends and neighbors down the block are the people who are most likely to be my clients. As a client or a business gets big enough that they might need to do an initial public offering, is what you're talking about with an IPO, where they're putting out stock to the general public. They've generally grown beyond my ability to be able to serve them here. Theoretically, I could do that, but I would push that to a larger law firm that would specialize in that area.
Okay, the reason why I brought it up was the news this week that Dan Gilbert of Quicken Loans is setting up an IPO for rocket companies, and there's been some concerns that this could happen to him. What happened to Pete Carmanos with CompuWare, which became, a traded company, and eventually he got forced out. Mm-hmm. And some say that this could possibly be happening to Dan Gilbert. Of course, he had a stroke last year. He wants to make sure everything is in order. But what would you counsel a small business owner that maybe has had a debilitating illness, such as a stroke, as we saw with Dan Gilbert? Mm-hmm. How would you counsel a small business owner to try to leave a legacy behind so that the company can be continued and not have to be busted up upon his death or her death?
Yeah, and these are issues that we at least try to talk to small business owners about at the beginning of the process. I like to sit down with the small business owners and walk them through the different scenarios that may occur, and a debilitating illness is one of those things. And if you're setting up a small business and you're doing, say, a partnership, you're going to get into an agreement, a limited liability company or partnership with another person, you now have obligations to that other person. And oftentimes, if one of those key people within that business is not able to perform the work or the services that they would generally be able to do for that business, that could put the entire business in jeopardy and put the livelihood of the other owners of that business in jeopardy. I have had multiple businesses that we've helped put together where one, for instance, there were two friends who were going to do it. They decided that they wanted to do a cleaning business together. So they started up the business. They bought a bunch of cleaning equipment. They got a bunch of contracts to clean local factories and office buildings at night together. They did it for quite a while. And while one of them didn't get a debilitating illness, he lost interest in doing the job and said, you know what, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm done. I'm going to quit. And his partner said, hey, wait a minute. We have all of these obligations in terms of the payments to make on the equipment, as well as all of these contracts, and I can't do it myself. And if you quit, then the whole business is going to go down and I'm going to lose everything that I have in it. And we had tried to talk to them about those potential risks on the front end, but they weren't willing to do it because they were so anxious to get the business started. And that's one of the biggest problems that we have with small businesses when they're starting up, is they're so anxious to get going, to start doing the work, to start pulling the money in, that they're not very circumspect about what might go wrong, what can go wrong, and trying to deal with those issues on the front end. And I like to say to clients, it's better for you to talk through these things and to work out potential resolutions for these things when you like each other. At the beginning of the business, when you are working together, when you do like each other, start making decisions about how you're going to address these things, rather than waiting until things fall apart and you don't like each other anymore, because it's much harder to come to an amicable resolution when you don't like somebody.
Let's get to a call. Good morning. You're on the line with attorney Nathan Bocks.
Good morning, and I preface this by saying the present company accepted. A man walked into a lawyer's office, and he asked him, "How much does your advice cost?" He asked the lawyer. $250 for 3 questions, replied the lawyer. "Isn't that awful steep?" asked the man. "Yes," said the lawyer, replied. "And what was your third question?"
Nice to appreciate the call. 395-1450, 395-1450. That's a fast way to make $250, I think, Nathan.
We lawyers love lawyer jokes. Every time we hear one, we smile and add $50 to the bill.
By the way, the meter is not running, and he is not charging anything for you calling at 395-1450, 395-1450. As Kevin Wall would say, let's get to a line that is actually somebody on it. But anyway, I want to ask a serious question, Nathan, about ending a business. We talk about starting up a business, but what if, say, a family, a couple who's been making donuts for 50 years decides it's time to retire. And yes, people are going to miss us, but we got to step aside. It's not just as easy as just closing the door, shutting off the lights. There has to be some legal things they have to do too, right?
There are, and we usually use the term transition, a business transition, because there are lots of different ways that a business can end or wrap up. And the way you described is one that happens fairly frequently, but actually is, in my experience, has not been as common as some others. But yes, if you say, hey, I've been doing this business, I can't find anybody who's interested in purchasing the business from me. I can't find anybody to transition the business over to. I'm just going to close my doors. There are potentially a lot of different legal issues that need to be dealt with. The first I always talk to clients about is making sure that they have all of their taxes in order, that they've done everything that they need to do to make sure that they're paying their ongoing taxes like sales tax, but also their income taxes. If they've got employees, dealing with the employee issues, and that can be then a whole nother category of, well, it wasn't just mom and dad making the donuts. There were people there that were helping them sell the donuts. What obligations do they have to those employees to make sure that those employees are covered legally? And then there are also the moral and the ethical issues that come along with that for a lot of folks, especially in this area. Say, hey, I don't want to just leave people in the lurch if I don't have to. What can I do to help ease the burden for them? And then there are all of the issues that may go along with the real estate or the actual location for the business. Are they renting their location? And if they are, do they have a lease that we need to wrap up? Are they at the end of that lease term? Do we have to work out something with the landlord? Do they own the property that they're on? Are they looking at selling that property? And sometimes that property ends up being the retirement savings for that small business, where they say, I'm going to sell my property over time so I can spread that income out over time. There are so many different issues that can potentially come up with the transition of a business that it's awfully, I could sit here again all morning and talk about all of the different potential issues. And really that's something that comes up a lot in my practice is people will ask what they think is a very general, question, looking for those 3 questions for $250. And I say, we need to narrow the scope of these questions down a little bit, because otherwise we're dealing with way too many hypotheticals. And so what I often end up spending a lot of my time with clients doing is figuring out what their particular issue is. Because in my experience, every problem has a solution. It's just a matter of first figuring out what the problem is, second, figuring out where you want to end up being, and then we can chart the path in between those 2 points.
Nathan Bocks is not only mayor of the city of Holland, but he is also an attorney at law with Central Park Law. Again, centralpark.law is the website. We'll put a link to that when we put the podcast of our conversation momentarily on our website at WHTC.com, our Zoom conversation video. We'll also put a link a little bit later on today, again, at WHTC.com. Nathan, I wish you well. I look forward to chatting with you again soon. And in a couple of months, another Ask the Attorney segment with you from Central Park Law. Nathan, thank you.
It's always a pleasure, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Nathan Bocks, attorney at law, with our Ask the Attorney segment.